Stephanie, hey, welcome.
Hello there. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, hello to you as well. So, differentiation has been named a couple of times in this event today, and but we're not done yet. So, when everything looks the same, differentiate through clarity is the name of your talk. So, take it away.
Yeah, awesome. So thank you for setting that up, Pep. Yes, this talk, welcome from wherever you're joining today. This talk is about differentiation through clarity. And my name is Stephanie Perozo. I'm a senior product marketing manager at Contentful. And I'm going to share a few tips from my own personal journey or that we went through across the business for messaging and positioning to drive differentiation. And for those of you who don't know Contentful, we do something called content really well, if you didn't gather that by the name. And what we do is we help content creators, marketers, or developers just make sure that they can get content out to the different channels that they use in their activities. And this might sound easier than it actually is, but typically in the past, a lot of people had to copy paste a lot of content from one system to the other just to make sure that they could get it on their website and on their mobile phone. So what we're trying to do is just make it easier to create your content once and just publish it everywhere. And the thing is, and I'm going to give you a little bit of insight on our business so that you understand how we went through this messaging and positioning and differentiation journey, is that we were known as our technological approach to this is API first, but we were known as a headless solution. And any marketer out in the crowd will know that you should never call yourself something by what you're not. So basically, we started looking at this and realizing, yes, that might be our way of doing it, our technological advantage and differentiation against the old way of working. But it's not something that our buyers were able to understand because it immediately conveyed that we were missing something. So we had to think long and hard. How can we reframe what this means for customers in a way that they will understand? So we repositioned ourselves as a content platform to focus more on what we are rather than what we're not. But it's not just our business that has gone through this kind of shift and need to differentiate. Um, Let me just make sure. Yeah. There's a lot of marketers out there that are also thinking like, how the heck did we even get to this point where we were well recognized before for doing something very well, but now suddenly it's so hard for our customers to understand what it is that we do. And the fact is that there's so many different solutions out there that yeah, it just becomes really hard to stand out when you've got so many new startups and so many different unicorns that have so much funding, and you've also got established organizations that are, reinventing themselves or different business units to appeal to a bigger market. So when when you're strapped for resources or when you're a scale up and you're really trying to carve out your own place in the market, the real question is, how can you make it clearer for your customers to understand what it is that you do and why they should consider you? So that's what we'll be covering today. And, if you consider the past and what it looked like was that there were fewer solutions and it was easier to differentiate through, talking about new versus old or right versus wrong or this feature versus that feature. But as there are so many more options for buyers out in the market, not only are there more options, but there's also more buyers. So you have to think about that perspective and to stand out when everyone is saying the same exact thing or also trying to capture your customers' attention. You need to be able to just be clear so that that can help your customer consider you and ultimately make a decision for you, whether you're in a B2B or B2C marketplace that is crowded. So there are a few things that you can stop doing today to start differentiating. And it was funny because I heard Rachel at the last part of her talk talking about, all of these different words that you use. And yeah, absolutely. The words are hard to craft, but pretty words should never take precedence over the actual value for your customers. And just because you use sophisticated terms that reflect your technology, it doesn't mean that it will help you differentiate. You have to use the right words that are actually grounded in the problem that you solve for your customers and how your customers are also referring to it. And so it's funny because when people get very jargony or start using a lot of terms that people are scratching their heads to understand, you can tell that that's very much an inside out approach. We've worked on some messaging, and this is what we want to tell the market that we're doing. And so that's what we're going to do. And we're going to have better words than other people. But again, inside out approach, you really need to be thinking about, what is it that you're doing? What is it that your market is looking for? And is that what you're solving for? And the other end of the spectrum when it comes to messaging and positioning is that you can over index on a few customers that are an unrepresentative sample of your broader addressable customer or a broader addressable market. And so then you start basing your messaging and positioning on a small sample of few or very vague customers, which means that you essentially alienate everyone else who's trying to understand what it is that you do for them. So that's also something to just beware and ideally not do. The Pragmatic Institute, they call it the listening to the noisy 20%, where you listen to, your friendly customers and your partners that are very vocal, but eventually you end up shaping your messaging and positioning, and sometimes, in the worst case scenario, your entire product roadmap on that 20%. Again, for future business viability and for differentiation in the market, you don't want to kind of narrow yourself down to that. Unless you do that really well and that's your differentiation, then by all means. And then the final thing is that there's so much information out in the market today that buyers are looking to find out quickly what it is that you can do for them. Now, if you keep them guessing and looking for the information to try to just get a glimmer of an understanding of what it is that you do, they're very quickly going to find another vendor that makes this a lot easier. So you don't want to differentiate by being the hardest one to understand, that's for sure. But there's a few tools that I use whenever building out messaging and positioning, and to really kind of help differentiate. And I like to think about this from, driving a car or being, in the driver's seat, especially when you're building out this messaging and positioning. And I see this as the rear view mirror, the first thing that you look at, then your side mirrors. You've got your navigation that's kind of guiding you throughout the way, and then you've got the road ahead. So if we break these down, we start seeing that as you're driving, and by the way, I'm a terrible driver. I'm an extremely nervous driver. So I have to use all these tools to make sure that, I feel confident of what we're going to market with, and that we're going to the right place. So there's a few things that you just need to get comfortable with when building out messaging and positioning, because as I heard in the earlier talk, you can't encompass it all. And everybody is going to want to have some claim or some real estate within that messaging and positioning framework. And ultimately, it comes down to being super clear to what you mean for your customer. So using your rear view mirror, your customers that got you here are a great source of information to understand the use cases that you solve for them, the problems that you solve for them. So you can build your messaging today based on that existing or former customer base, because you were able to solve something for them already. You have tangible proof of what you were able to do. But you also want to understand what is it that they're doing and the different kind of behaviors that you could potentially support them with, and that makes their jobs and their lives easier. So you're building your messaging based on the customer today, but you're also understanding potential future challenges or complexities that are going to exist within their workday that you can start positioning for, that you're going to solve for. So you position for your future customer as well. Now, you want to check your side mirrors as well. You need to always have an understanding of what's happening in your surroundings. But what I see very often in product marketing is that people over-index on their competitive landscape, and you have this feature to feature comparison. And yes, absolutely, you totally need to understand what's happening in your surroundings, but features and all of those capabilities, because the market is moving so quickly, they will become commoditized. It'll be so hard to just keep track of all of those things. And yes, there are tools for that nowadays as well. But you want to differentiate your solution today versus the status quo. What is your customer doing that might not be the most efficient or best way to actually do something that you actually will be able to solve for in the future? And that's where I mean with check your side view mirrors. Yes, understand the market, but really, really, truly understand your customer and the way that they're doing things today, because that might be what you're competing against. Now, you will also have some kind of navigation and some map to get there, right? We all have OKRs or strategic plans that we're working towards. And this is all really good to have. And in a lot of our industries that are very fast moving, you're never going to have this very long view of all the things that you need to accomplish to get to that future state. And the reality is, you also don't want to have a 3-year roadmap and vision of where it is that you're going, because that will also hinder you from reaping the opportunities that come along the way. So, look at what's right ahead of you and make sure that your messaging and positioning reflects the immediate value for your customer, because it's today that they're struggling with something that you can offer a solution for. And then finally, we're talking about this future state and the positioning for the future state. Absolutely, you need to understand it, but don't get stuck on it. I heard Rachel saying that, you can't be changing your foundation and messaging and positioning, but it really does depend on where your customer is at today and where your customer is also going in terms of what you're going to be able to solve for them. And the point here is that you have to be able to iterate, not quantum shifts, but you do have to be able to iterate, incorporate new insights that can be baked into your messaging and positioning, and use that to clearly articulate what that future state looks like. People don't make long-term or big commitments just for the immediate term. They also want to understand, this is what you have today. We, as a vendor, understand where it is that you're going, and that we're going to help you get there, right? So it's selling into that longer term view of how we fit their business. So those are some things that I've had to get comfortable with to make sure that we're always reflecting in our messaging and positioning what's most relevant to the customer, so that it's clear for them what it is that we can offer them. So as a final little reminder, don't say what everyone's saying. Don't just focus on the terms that everyone is using nowadays. Really focus on the value that you offer your customer, so that you don't end up on the sameness pile, so that you can truly differentiate your solution. And you can really truly do this is by keeping your pulse on the customer, because they're the ones that are buying you. They're the ones with problems today, and they're the ones that you can solve for. The end. And hopefully that offers you some tips for some differentiation in the future.
Thank you very much. So differentiation is a big piece, and I talk about it a lot. And the question that I often get, okay, I got it. I need to be different. Sure. Well, but then I'm not different. If I'm honest,
Yeah.
I'm
Everyone's
marketing
unique.
automation, and everybody else is marketing automation. We have the same features. So then what's the first step? Or how do you become different if you're actually not?
Well, I think that's a kind of similar challenge that we had. At some point, we were unique, right? We were one of the few vendors in the market. And then over time, a lot more vendors crept up.
Mhm.
And so it was pausing and taking a long, hard look, and mostly asking our customers and partners, how do you see us different than, whatever else you're using? And yeah, a lot of the times it goes into this kind of feature comparison and stuff. And ultimately it comes down to that longer term state of where it is that customers want to go. and we based our repositioning on that. So just one example was that, talking about headless, I don't know, everybody was like, what is that? And then we had to think about, wait, what is it that we're really helping customers with? First of all, it's content, right? That's what we really help customers with. That's what we do really well. But also when we think about the platform, it's about helping multiple different people operate this content. So then simple, put these two things together and start defining that, right? And I don't want to go into the whole spiel about like category creation. I think that that's probably a separate topic, very related to differentiation, but a separate topic if you do go down that path. But I think first thing is just clarity. And more than differentiation, I would even want to say that just be clear for your customer.
Yeah. Yeah. Another question that I would have is, okay, let's say we want to differentiate on like messaging and positioning. So like, we're for a different market segment. And let's say right now we are for everybody, like
Mhm.
we're not really discriminating a type of customer because,
Yeah.
it's hard to say no to money. So how would you start picking your focus in the market? So if you understand that you need to like niche down or pick a segment, a slice of the market, how would you go about making that decision?
I guess the question back would be, are you trying to just create a differentiated value proposition for that specific market segment, or are you narrowing down your market segment to sell to a specific audience? Because you
Well, I,
could
gue-
do
I
both.
guess the goal would be, let's say that, I'm an email marketing tool, for instance,
Yeah.
and I'm like MailChimp, but MailChimp is like kicking my butt because they're the category king. Okay, I cannot compete with them head on, so I need to pick somebody else,
Yeah.
like a smaller segment, perhaps.
Yeah. So I think this all comes down to listening to your customers very often. I know that a lot of people, they go on a kind of like buyer persona research, or they go through some kind of research once, build out a messaging framework, and then kind of run with that forever. But like, I feel like you need to focus down. If you want to really differentiate for a specific market segment, go and speak with them very often to understand what it is that those problems that you can uniquely solve for them. And then from there, you can start building out your messaging and positioning and have a very clear value proposition. But if you think that there's a big opportunity and that you're really solving for that particular customer, go hard and really try to understand the challenges that they're facing. I think that that's the only way. Just listen to your customers very often. And not just the 20% that I referenced before, not just a small group of friendlies that want to share their insights, but the customers that you might not be addressing today that you think you have the solution for.
Awesome. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom here. Everybody follow Stephanie on LinkedIn, and looking forward to hearing from you in the future.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much and have a great day or great evening, depending on where you are.